Hello, today is Monday, June 27th, 2022. I'm Joe Schmidt from TC2, and this is Staying Connected. Over the years, we've talked a lot about how telecom vendors love to pile on charges that fall outside the rates for services that enterprise customers work really hard to negotiate and lock down in their agreements. Vendors give these add-on charges official sounding names like the Federal Access Recovery Fee, the Administrative and Telco Recovery Charge, or the Property Tax Allotment, suggesting that they are some kind of pass-through fee imposed on vendors by the government. Folks, these charges are just made-up vendor fees, made-up rates that carriers lay on top of the one legitimate fee, which is the USF, and that is actually established by the government. And frankly, even that doesn't have to be passed on to you. So put simply, they are unstabilized, non-negotiated, budget-busting fees that vendors love to impose to juice their bottom lines without having to be negotiated or sadly justified to their customers. And now, the latest new entrant in this market of made-up revenue-enhancing charges, courtesy of Verizon, is the Economic Adjustment Charge, which will start hitting enterprise wireless bills any day now. So let's talk about Verizon's latest revenue enhancer and what it means for enterprise customers. Today, I'm joined by Jack Deal, the Managing Director here at TC2, and Andrew Brown, the Managing Partner of LB3 and the Chairman of TC2. Hey, guys, thanks for joining me today.
Good to be here, Joe.
Yeah, good to be back.
Okay, Jack, let me start with you. Why don't you tell us what the Verizon Economic Adjustment Charge is and how it's going to hit our customers' bills?
Sure, Joe. For businesses, the economic adjustment charge will impose a $2.20 per line per month charge on enterprise wireless smartphone plans with data. The same $2.20 charge applies to plans exclusively supporting mobile hotspots. Enterprise voice-only plans, if anyone even has those anymore, will have a 98 cents per line per month charge imposed. So this is a pretty substantial line item on most enterprise wireless plans.
So do we know yet when those charges are going to start applying to enterprise plans and how they'll be applied?
We do. Verizon has indicated that it will start imposing the economic adjustment charge on plans that have less than 12 months of minimum line term billing remaining on any multi-year plan, and will also impose the fee on any plan that renews or for which there is a device upgrade. Any new plan after May 16th of this year, any out-of-contract or month-to-month lines of service, and any bring-your-own-device or BYOD line will be subject to the charge. For what it's worth, Verizon has said that as of now, the charge will not apply to machine-to-machine connections supporting enterprise IoT functions.
You know, that unfortunately sounds like it will be applied, well, comprehensively across Verizon services.
Yeah, to coin a political phrase from the past, you might call it Verizon's No Line Left Behind initiative.
All right. So, Andrew, you've been super critical over the years about the carrier's use of these types of charges to generate revenue outside the scope of the real deal they negotiate for their enterprise customers. Is just more of the same?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this add-on charge is just a way for Verizon to raise rates for its service without actually having to raise rates for its service. And by doing this, Verizon doesn't really have to wait for renegotiation of its deals to raise those rates, even though there may be some delay in the application of the charge until plans hit their final 12 months. And I guess more importantly, Verizon doesn't have to advertise this as part of its actual plan costs, making it more difficult for customers to compare plans on an apples-to-apples basis. I'm super critical of this because it's a super disingenuous way for vendors to generate more revenue out of a deal when they've already agreed to a price for the services and customers and vendors sign their deal. These charges just add on to the amount customers agreed to pay, and the charge is subject to change, which of course means an increase, really at any time and for any reason whenever Verizon decides it wants to improve its revenue stream.
So how do they get away with it?
Well, I mean, to put it bluntly, because customers agree to let them do this. If you look at most agreements, even heavily negotiated enterprise agreements, there are not so heavily negotiated contract provisions that explicitly allow vendors wide discretion to impose these types of charges without many limits, if any at all. And when you look at Verizon's really laughable public justification for this charge, you can see what they're doing here. The economic adjustment charge sort of sounds like some kind of response to inflationary pressures in the economy, as if that was a legitimate basis for raising fixed prices in a completed multi-year deal. But in various statements since the charge came out and got a lot of negative press, Verizon pushed out some kind of nonsense about how from time to time, Verizon will make adjustments to fees, or in this case, make up an entirely new one to defray their administrative costs for complying with regulatory requirements.
So wait, what regulatory requirements are they talking about? I mean, were there any?
No, I mean, there aren't any new ones. Every business has regulatory requirements they have to comply with, and they change over time. And those businesses don't get to make up a new fee to cover those costs. And in reality, there are no new sudden regulatory costs that Verizon has to pay. This is really just a way for Verizon to have a plausible basis within their existing contracts to impose this charge and to distract customers from looking too closely at what's going on here.
Which is just pure revenue enhancement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, customers may hate this charge, but Verizon probably doesn't care about what their customers think about it. I mean, you know who loves this charge? Wall Street, which was thrilled with Verizon announcing it would be able to increase its earnings without having to spend any money to do it. So after this announcement, Verizon got a nice little bump in its stock price at a time when the stock market has kind of been trending in the opposite direction.
Incredible. So, Jack, what's going on with the other wireless carriers, and how should enterprise customers start approaching this when they negotiate their wireless deals?
Well, AT&T also began raising rates earlier this year on its consumer plans, and by significant amounts, somewhere in the range of $6 to $12 per line per month. They did it a little more honestly by actually raising their rate plan charges rather than imposing an uncapped surcharge on the side. But the carriers have been trying to stabilize and raise charges for mobility services for a while, and the current economic environment has given them an opening to do just that.
So let's look at T-Mobile. I see that they rolled out a commercial kind of bashing Verizon for this new economic adjustment charge. So what's T-Mobile doing?
Yes, they did, and they seem to be holding tight on their rate plan charges. T-Mobile's been pretty good historically about limiting the external non-negotiated fees on their wireless plans, though they don't have entirely clean hands. They do have a few fees that they add on. They're always been a bit of an outlier on this and don't charge separate pass-through, for example, on USF. Although the new T-Mobile is placing increased emphasis on the enterprise market, the reality is they have much ground to make up and a lot to learn to become a big player for large businesses. They remain poorly equipped to negotiate and close enterprise-class deals. Perhaps the economics of their rate plans will change this going forward, but I suspect it will take some time to see them as a real player in the enterprise market.
Yeah, and interestingly, they touched a huge nerve with Verizon when they criticized them with this ad. Verizon kind of freaked out with a press release saying that T-Mobile is not as pure as they claim to be, and sort of methodically listing all the times over the last 10 years that Verizon thinks T-Mo has been kind of naughty with its pricing plans or dishonest with its uncarrier ad campaign. But it was sort of a weird overreaction from Verizon and kind of boiled down to, we're pretty bad. And even though T-Mobile is not as bad as we are, they are not as good as they claim to be. So it wasn't exactly a compelling case for Verizon's new charge and its own business practices in this area.
It is kind of funny, but at least it does indicate some level of competition in the market, that the carriers are fighting with each other, at least here publicly. Now, they're calling each other out. And Jack, I suppose we got to look at what companies should do about this, if anything, and what they should be doing about these charges.
Well, as Andrew pointed out earlier, these fees are tough to put back in the bottle once you have contract provisions that allow them to be imposed. It then becomes extraordinarily difficult to eliminate or limit these charges when you're negotiating your deals. And most times, it's not worth trying to have the key contract language modified or removed unless one is in a position of supreme leverage. You definitely want to make sure that you understand these charges, the impact they have on your total cost of ownership of wireless services, and how they compare across suppliers when you're competitively negotiating your deals. You also want to get a handle on what kind of charges may increase during the term of the deal, like Verizon's economic adjustment charge, and which ones are fixed for the term, like rate plan increases. And you always want to push very hard for money in the form of credits or the like to reduce the impact of such add-on fees or expenses. That, as always, is a function of leverage and how competitive your wireless procurements are.
Okay, thank you, Jack, and thank you as well, Andrew. Good stuff. There's a lot happening in the wireless world and with ICT in general. So if you'd like to hear more, Jack, Andrew, me, and any of our colleagues at LB3 and TC2, we'd be happy to talk. So just shoot us an email or give us a call. You can also stay up to date by subscribing to these podcasts, by checking out our websites, and by following us on LinkedIn.